Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. My wife proposed that she set up a store that was filled with the items of failed hobbies of Tom Barbalet, that Tom Barbalet had amassed so many things through his recent life, so many hobbies which had fallen by the wayside, never to be picked up again, $200 worth of items here, $150 worth of items there. These kind of things eventually added up into something that could create a store. This was a beautiful idea. I thought it was very amusing. It was worthy of at least a few short funks. Here I want to start with the 80% firearms. In order to understand this hobby, you need to take a step back, a step way back. A young Tom Barbalet walking through the Australian War Memorial with his father, not necessarily obsessed with firearms, but just realised that firearms played an important role in a variety of turning points in history. And also, in Australia at the time, there was a kind of pervasive fear of firearms, and my particular perspective is, wherever you have fear associated with a certain group of knowledge, it's usually important to gather that certain group of knowledge, if nothing more, just to negate the fear in some very profound way. So, as a young boy, I began studying firearms. I never took a particularly heavy interest in it. I received a firearms license when I was, 17, 18, maybe 18, 19, probably 18 actually. My mother had just left Australia, and it was actually really difficult to obtain a firearms license in Australia at that period of time. But I took the written exams. It was kind of an evening, a series of exams. You had to fire a few rounds through a rifle, this kind of stuff. But I got my firearms license. And my particular perspective at that time was that this was something which was to distinguish me from various other folk that I associated with in the particular far left. The notion that actually, from my perspective at least, organisations like the Black Panthers indicated strongly that you needed to have a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of skills with regards to firearms, and this was just as important as being able to understand, various political perspectives, various means of analysis, these kind of things, that it was just a skill that one had. And honestly, through my life, particularly after I left Australia, I wasn't really interested in state licensing associated with firearms. And really, honestly, I've not owned firearms in the US. It's almost impossible to own them in the UK. So when I found the 80% firearms movement, it was something that was interesting to me because it required you to learn a certain amount of gunsmithing. It required to move you out of a comfort zone into an area where you could start exploring another kind of knowledge, basically. So probably in a 2-year period, maybe a year and a half, I acquired half a dozen of these 80% firearms. And honestly, aside from a little bit of sanding, aside from doing a few very small things to these bits of metal, I've really done nothing with them. They exist up in the attic. They don't really have any practical purpose. They have this kind of difficult problem that if ever I was to move anywhere, particularly anywhere internationally, I would just have to dispose of these things. I mean, they're fundamentally trash as they are currently. They don't really fit in with any hobby that I do. And a few years back, the last of these that I acquired was a series of broken down bits of Sten gun. Through this, I purchased the California legalization kit, which required a certain degree of machining and welding in order to make a California legal Sten gun, which still actually you can't utilize because you need a 5-round or a 10-round magazine, which just doesn't work out with a Sten gun. So what I have is a series of abstract bits of metal that I could never really import into any other country. It's just a failed hobby of mine, like many. So in these short funk recordings, I'm going to periodically record on failed hobbies of mine. This is going to be an ongoing topic of somewhat quizzical conversation. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.